Lots of new faces from the previous personnel committee. Some not quite so new faces, but don't take that personally when I say it that way. Why am I getting that to look boring? Oh, but you know what? Oh dear, oh, here we go again. No, seriously, a very warm welcome to all of you. I hope you enjoy the meeting today, and a warm welcome also to our comms team and Pauline as our guest today. I'm going to ask if that's okay now to start the live broadcast. We have to pause for about 10 seconds, which is the usual drill. We're on drill. Okay. Yep. Please start the broadcast. If I may, in that case, I'll hand you over to Marge.
Okay, I'm going to kick us off. Welcome, everybody. So item 1 on the agenda is terms of reference and membership for Personnel Committee. I'm going to move the recommendations on page 5, and I'm going to ask for a seconder.
I'll be second that, Marge. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Everybody in agreement with those? Those approved? Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll hand you over to the chair of the committee now. Then, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you. Thank you, Marge. Item 2 in that case, minutes of the meeting held on 10th of March 2021. Now I do appreciate quite a lot of you weren't there at the last meeting for a variety of different reasons. You move. Okay. Thank you very much. All happy with that? Yes, seconded. Thank you very much, Helen. Good news. Good morning, James. Item 3, apologies for absence. Sarah?
Okay, so we have Councillor Henry sends his apologies. He's on holiday and he's been substituted for today's meeting by Councillor Jim Creamer.
Okay. Well, welcome to you, Jim. As I keep calling you the super sub of this council. Now, seriously, warm welcome. Declarations of interest. Item 4. Do any members, officers present have any disclosure of pecuniary interest to declare? And do any members, officers present have any private interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary, to declare? No? Okay, thank you very much. Item 5, I formally introduce the report and move the recommendation on page 17 of the agenda. Do you have a seconder?
I will second that, Chair.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jill, how's your voice? If I could ask you to present the report. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you. Good morning, members. My name is Jill Elder. I'm the Head of Human Resources for the County Council. Today, there are several reports, some of which have an element of update to ensure that members are clear on where we are on a number of the different initiatives that have previously been discussed at this committee. The first one then is the County Council's employment opportunities for young people. Members have previously received reports around our apprenticeship programme, our graduate trainee programme and various work experience initiatives. The pandemic has created even more significant challenges for young people in accessing employment, and what the council, as one of the largest employers in the county, needs to do is demonstrate clear leadership and maximise the opportunities wherever possible. Notwithstanding, the council has an ageing workforce in existence at the moment, and we need to plan for the future to ensure that we've got people with the right skills, the right knowledge, the right levels of experience to take on roles in public service in the future. What the current situation has also allowed us to do is to reflect on where we've got to on a number of our initiatives. And this is particularly true in terms of apprenticeships. So the County Council has done relatively well in the number of its apprenticeships. It has a differing approach. So there are New Start apprentices where vacancies have been identified as being available with the relevant apprenticeship standard. There are apprenticeships for existing employees to further develop their skills and knowledge. And then there are entry point apprenticeships, which are at a basic level that provide entry point access to employment for people who perhaps haven't achieved well in academics at school, for example. Overall, the council, through the HR and Workforce and Organisational Development team, cover things like work experience for school pupils. We'll talk a little bit this morning about the Kickstart programme, which is a new initiative for young people in receipt of universal credit. We will talk about the graduate trainee scheme because interviews took place last week, so we've got some up-to-the-minute updates for you on that. And also talk a little bit about the Leonard Cheshire Change 100 interns, which provides internships, paid internships for 3 months for young people about to graduate who have disabilities. So focusing initially on work experience, this is probably the area that's been most significantly impacted because we've thought it not right to bring school-aged children into council buildings when they've been closed to the public. What we have done is develop a virtual work experience programme, which has been designed initially to accommodate requests for placements from schools, but will in future plan to offer opportunities to a wider audience and indeed to offer taster sessions in particular professional areas such as social work. The programme includes e-learning modules, which are designed to build an understanding of what working for the council is like, but also to provide a range of real-life experiences so that when people do apply for opportunities with the council, they will have a sense of what it's like to work in a large, complex organisation. So we're launching the schools programme in July. Sessions have been offered throughout August, and we have a specific programme aimed at 14 to 18-year-olds interested in a career in social work. That went live in June. That is an area of work that we will continue to build on, and actually we're using one of our own apprentices to develop the work alongside other colleagues. So that is a very clear example of how we're trying to build and develop young people's knowledge and share it across a range of services. Kickstart, as I mentioned, is a government initiative aimed at 16 to 24-year-old claimants of universal credit. It's the offer of a 6-month work placement, paid work placement, and the council has registered with the Department of Work and Pensions as a Kickstart employer. We've got to give a commitment to have at least 35 of these placements, and we are beginning to develop that over time. We think it's important that young people are given employability skills, so assistance with CV writing and planning, how to fill out application forms, interview skills, also functional skills for young people who may not have achieved those at school in English, maths and ICT if they're required. What we find with all our programmes of work is if there's an identified mentor from any area of the council, that offers a degree of less formal support and has been successful across both the graduate trainee scheme, apprentices and hopefully when we get up and running with our Kickstart programme, it will be similarly successful there. Members who've previously attended this committee will be aware that we use the apprenticeship levy to offer learning and development opportunities where there is an approved apprenticeship standard, and that's really important. So we can't just give apprenticeships in any area. There has to be an approved standard. There's some detailed information about the number of apprentices that we have in situ across the council and maintained schools, and also a new development where we have approval to transfer some of our levy to SMEs in Nottinghamshire to enable Nottinghamshire residents to access apprentices in areas where the council doesn't. So if you want an apprenticeship to be a butcher, for example, then the county council doesn't have trained butchers, can't offer that, but we can transfer some of our levy money to enable that to be a supported apprenticeship in a business in Nottinghamshire. And to date, we've had some applications already to do that because we've been doing it since August of last year. There's been 33 successful applications for funding in this way, funding 51 apprenticeships, and that's a commitment of 468,500. So that's something we want to particularly grow, because I think that's an area where we can generate economic prosperity and assist in employment opportunities across the whole county. Moving on then to the graduate programme. This is a 2-year development programme where graduate trainees have 4 placements in different parts of the council over this 2-year period. There are set criteria, so we don't accept applications from any graduate in any part of the country. It's specifically for people who've attended one of the local universities and also where they are resident in Nottinghamshire. We were previously part of a national graduate scheme, but have since decided to go our own way, and this is the 4th year that we've run our own traineeships. The quality of applicants remains exceptionally high. Having been involved in 3 days interviews last week, I was again incredibly impressed by the people coming forward. The report mentions that we would have 6 people starting in September. I'm pleased to say that through begging and borrowing, we now have 8 placements starting on the 30th of September. All the candidates who've been offered have accepted their placement, so that's really good news. Moving then to the Change 100 programme. This is a programme supported by Leonard Cheshire, and this is where we offer 3-month paid internships to graduates with disabilities. The report alludes to 4 placements starting in June. I'm pleased to say 3 of the 4 have started already, and the 4th will start in August due to some personal circumstances. So again, we've worked very closely with Leonard Cheshire, and they're also working with us on our disability confidence submission, which will be bringing a report to this committee later in the year regarding that. As mentioned, the council has a lead role in identifying employment opportunities at varying levels for all our residents. It's really important that we seek to build on our brand as an employer of choice, and our commitment to these initiatives provides demonstrable proof of the work underway to improve employment chances, which has an overall positive impact on the local economy. I'm happy to take any questions regarding this report, but I suggest that the recommendations are that members of Personnel Committee support the work that is already underway to improve employment opportunities, particularly for those who have additional challenges in securing regular and meaningful employment. Second, to approve a review of the current apprenticeship strategy to ensure it aligns with the emerging priorities post-COVID in relation to key skills development. And thirdly, to agree to receive a further report in September, which includes the refreshed apprenticeship strategy and which has a focus on employability and job opportunities for those reaching the end of their 2-year apprenticeship. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. I'll come back to you in a minute. Do you mind, Sheila? Just very briefly. It will be brief. Thanks very much, Jill. Marge did speak to me on Friday about the number of graduates increasing slightly, because Jill had said earlier on when she'd done the interviews that she was so impressed by the quality of the candidates. It seemed daft to let them slip through our fingers. Get them now while we can, and that's been glad with lots of nodding heads. So I'm really pleased about that. That's wonderful. And secondly, apprenticeships. Now, we've already had discussions with the comms team sitting in the back of the room here, and with the unions, and myself met the leader last week. We all said how important apprenticeships are to this council, and we must do as much as we can to offer employment opportunities to young people, and particularly young people. And those are disadvantaged groups, as Jill has just said, and that's what we will be doing. So we'll be putting our press releases on that. It's a complete commitment from us. The report mentions, and Jill's already said that, a review is taking place on how we deal with apprenticeships and what our strategy is. Enough for me. Over to you, folks. I think you were first, Sheila.
Right,
Then
thanks.
Maureen,
I-
you're next, okay?
I was just wondering, have you had many people who's done Inspire courses put the names forward to do any of these apprenticeships? Because it's a really good place to look, isn't it? I know a lot of people are doing it in all age groups.
Thank you, Councillor Place. We do work very closely with Inspire. They deliver some of the training programmes for us, and they also publicise opportunities that we have as well.
Thank you. I think throughout the report, mention is made of Inspire and our close working relationship with them. Absolutely, Sheila. Thank you for the question. Maureen, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Chairman. First of all, good report, Jill, as usual. Secondly, for those of you that are new, this council, I've been on this committee since I got elected in 2013, I think. I seem as though I'm a fixture. But seriously, they've done some really good work in this authority for young people, for apprenticeships, for graduates. And we've had in the past, and I hope we will in the future, some graduates come and give their thoughts and tell the committee how it goes and what it's all about. I'd like to see some apprentices doing the same, whether they're apprentices, senior apprentices, as I call them, or junior apprentices, because it's needed. What I would like to ask, Chairman, out of the 51 apprenticeships, Jill, through you, Chairman, are they, you said they're spread across the county, where I would quite like to see within at some stage a list of where they're spread across the county, because for people that don't go to school round County Hall, there might not be quite as many putting their names forward because they've got to travel. And perhaps that's something we should be thinking about. But, you know, it would be quite nice to know, for instance, how many from the Newark area. I'm sorry I have to say that, but I do, because we've got 2-3 secondary schools in that area that probably have children that want to do apprenticeships rather than go to university. So if we could have that at some stage, and Margie's nodding, so I think that's the answer. And as I put down here, the fact that we've got all these extra graduates, that's great. I think that common sense prevailed on that, and the fact she was so impressed with the standard, great. Are they all either Nottinghamshire born and bred or Nottinghamshire based? Yes, fine, okay. Well, also when they come, because I've met some of these graduates over the years that I've been here, because they've been in administration, and therefore I've met them, and they've been really good people. And if we've had, and very worthwhile keeping if we possibly can. But I like the idea that we can actually help small businesses, and actually if somebody wants to be a butcher. Now, I didn't know that. Now, I think that's something we need. I know you've used butcher as an analogy, but, you know, we really need to spell that out loud and clear, because my butchers in my village wouldn't know. You know, I mean, I think we need to spread the word a bit, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, would you mind putting that as an action point, what Maureen has asked for, so we can follow up on that? Is that all right? Because I know that's what you asked me to ask for, Maureen. Is that all right? Secondly, almost to answer your question, the comms team, as I said earlier, on the back of the room, tomorrow afternoon in this chamber, I'm actually interviewing 5 of our present graduates as part of publicity given to the wonderful graduates we've got, the high caliber graduates we've got. So I know the back of the room, they'll be working on that. And I've got a pen picture of the graduates that I'll be talking tomorrow afternoon. And I'm assuming that'll go on YouTube or some such similar mechanism. So in hand, Maureen, on that one which you raised just now. Okay. Thank you. Right, the next one I've got is Jono.
Chairman, thank you very much. In 2008, I left the military due to losing my leg in service, and this authority gave me my first opportunity in working since leaving the military. And it's great to hear that we are an equal opportunity as employer with recruiting across the spectrum of disabilities. So it made me really happy and sit up when I heard that, and hopefully we will see more people with disabilities hired by the local authority. So thank you very much.
A total commitment on our part, and I'm sure Joe would like to say something on that?
Absolutely. We don't sign up for any initiative that we don't have genuine action behind, because it's meaningless to do that. Next report, we'll be bringing the workforce profile report, which will give you an indication of how many people within the workforce have got declared disabilities. So that might be of interest to you as well. And also in respect of other committees, we are a gold standard Armed Forces Covenant Award winner, and one of the things that my service do is work quite closely with the Career Transition Partnership to provide opportunities or access to opportunities for people leaving the armed forces.
Thank you, John. Jim.
Yeah, my questions I was going to ask about have been asked as well, but in a slightly different vein. Going back to the last one, disabilities, a question. What is it? How do we actually define disabilities? Do we define it as in the Discrimination Act, or do you find it? How do we actually define it more targeted? So just an interest in what we define as disabilities, so that when we apply, and also going back to the butcher analogy, it would be useful, because I obviously didn't know that, but it would be useful to know what kind of trades you're actually applying, what kind of trades you're applying, as well as around the county. And perhaps even as councillors, we could target that if you were targeting trades, or are we just letting people come to us? So that would be useful information. And just one other, which I'm trying to remember off the top of my head now. I think I wrote it down. Oh yeah, the Cheshire programme, the 100. Just a little bit more detail on that, and how does that actually help people coming back as well above that age? I'm trying to get it right now. I think I've got it mixed up with the Peru standards, etc. But I'm just worried about the workforce, the older workforce, especially after COVID, and how we're helping that, because we're in unknown territory to some extent. We're guesstimating what's going to happen after COVID, how many jobs are going to be available when all the help from the government starts to run out, etc. So just wondering what we're doing for the older apprentices, older workforce, to try and help those get back into work, or even stay in work in some cases, I suppose.
Thank you, Jim. I think you've got 3-4 questions there, Jill.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Creamer. First off, in terms of disability, yes, there is the Equality Act 2010 definition of what constitutes a disability, but in seeking to support and enable people to remain in work, we would look at making reasonable adjustments very early on in somebody's absence, because it's in all our interests. It makes sound business sense to enable people to continue working wherever possible with support and assistance. So we probably apply a broader definition on disability than what statute requires in terms of that. Your next question, I think you made the point about what businesses have applied. I don't have that information to hand, but we'll certainly have it for the next time we bring apprenticeship information to this committee. And your final question, apologies, I've got to have written it down. The older workforce. So yes, you'll hear in reports later on today what we're trying to do to continue to support our existing workforce. It's open to anybody to apply for any of our jobs, whatever their age. We do know that we will have issues around anxiety, because we're kind of, when we look at the survey results, we're around 50-50, people desperate to come back into buildings and people really worried about coming back into buildings. So we've got a range of activities and engagement ongoing to try and address those. And we will look at, through our hybrid working model, which I think is due to go to next policy committee, that will seek to align service imperatives wherever possible with a degree of autonomy about how and where people work, where their service enables and facilitates them. Clearly, for around 2/3 of our workforce, they've carried on working in exact because they deliver services in communities. But for those where there is the opportunity for greater flexibility, that will be explored with their line managers.
Thank you. And well, Sarah, if you have item 2 as an action point, so we'll come back to Jim with the information he's asked for. Thank you. Do you want to?
No.
All right, thank you. Well, Helen, got you down next.
Thanks, Chair. Hi, Joe. Just a couple of really quick ones, and it's mainly just from my curiosity more than anything. On page 13 of the report, it says that many of the apprentices are existing employees. What percentage of the apprentices are existing employees, and the ones that aren't, whereabouts across the county are they coming from? Because a bit like what Maureen was saying, trying to get a geographical profile and seeing if there's particular colleges and schools and things like that that we could do some additional work with.
So apologies, I can't give you that breakdown figure today, but certainly, in fact, it was something identified just before we came into committee that would have been helpful to have included in the report. So we'll certainly make sure the breakdown between apprenticeship starts and existing employees who've got are on apprenticeships, we'll have that information included next time.
I asked the same question this morning, Helen. Well done. Yeah. We'll come back to you. Sarah's got an action point. We'll get back to you. Certainly, of course we will. Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of points, really. On work experience, what do we keep in touch with these young people? Because I can remember many impressive youngsters coming along and shadowing politicians here. One of them is now the leader of the council. But do we keep in touch with them? Do we try and retain them? Do we try and put them on a treadmill to get them into an apprenticeship in a couple of years down the line? And the second point is, I'm sure I remember, and I can't see it in the paper, maybe a couple of years ago now, we signed up to some sort of program with our own looked after youngsters, children in care, and then care leavers. And I think didn't we, Marge, guarantee them work placements and that sort of thing, internships or so I don't see that in the paper. So just an update on that, please.
Probably easier to answer that bit first. So we still do guarantee work opportunities to care leavers. We work very closely with the Leaving Care team who support those young people. We've had 2 care leavers start apprenticeship with ourselves. One of the reasons why we've sought to work with Futures and the levy transfer is because a lot of looked after young people don't necessarily want to work for the council. So we want to broaden the opportunities that are available to them by working with Futures and, as I say, having the levy transfer. So that broadens the offer and more likely to align with some of what they would like to do. They certainly had the opportunity through catering to come in, and we've certainly got a care leaver in a business support apprenticeship in Mansfield at the moment. Apologies, Councillor Jackson, can't remember your first question. Work experience. We don't have a formalised keeping in touch programme once young people have been for work experience. What we've previously had is a bit of an ad hoc arrangement. We got approached and we asked around and found out what the young person was interested. What we're trying to do is have a more formalised programme where people can access. So it isn't just that, you know, your dad might work for the council and therefore you get a chance to do work experience. There's a defined programme that's accessible through the public website. Keeping in touch. We certainly do that through school job fairs. We have senior officers go and talk at universities and local schools about career opportunities. We have close relationship with our maintained schools, albeit the majority of those are primary. So we are trying to seek different routes to ensure that the county council is on people's list of thinking of places they would like to come and work. And that's why it's important that, so having just interviewed the graduates, for example, even the unsuccessful ones had the most positive experience possible because they potentially in 5-10 years time will be coming back as senior leaders of the council. So certainly in terms of keeping in touch with work experience, that's something we'll take back and look at how we might build into the programme.
Can I just bring Marge and this point as well, please? Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say that point, that bit about reviewing the apprenticeship scheme, I think is one of the things we're keen to do there is to make sure that people who have apprenticeships, work experience with us, traineeships, that we are able to then help them secure employment. So I think that keeping in touch is the key bit we need to build in there. I think you're right. Yeah, but we'll have a look at that, see how the best way to do it, because probably with some easier said, work experience, it's easier said than, yeah.
Thank you, Richard. Callum.
Thank you, Chairman. Just following through on the graduate scheme, I know you mentioned, I think it was everyone's Nottinghamshire or Nottingham born and bred. Do you mind if I ask which universities are they from? Are they all from Nottingham, the Nottingham universities? Are they perhaps further afield in the UK or perhaps closer to the county?
They're not necessarily Nottingham born and bred, but they are committed to living in Nottinghamshire, and they've attended either Nottingham Trent, University of Nottingham. We look at University of Lincoln. We have in the past considered the Sheffield universities for residents and young people north of the county.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it was really great to see the feedback on the apprenticeship scheme, because the whole point of the review that's been undertaken is to actually look at what we're doing and how we can improve going forward. So anyone who has got these comments coming forwards, please feed into the review, because that's the whole point. So we actually know how we can target this going forwards. And I know the great work that the team are doing to really look at this from the ground up to make sure that we have a scheme that's fit for purpose. And from being on the committee before, seeing the graduates, for example, when they spoke to us, I know that what I said before, bowled over by how great they were. And the advantage of bringing in people on graduate apprenticeships is so that we get that new way of thinking, but also that we can use the experience of our existing team. The whole point of this isn't just to replace people who are here and to say if you're a certain age and off you go. It's to actually make sure that experience is kept within the council, because last thing we want to do is people to get to retirement age and go. We haven't had the opportunity to impart that experience and knowledge onto new people, and especially with issues around climate change and environment becoming much more prevalent. I know I was speaking to Jill before, a lot of the graduates are really keen on that sort of agenda. So that's really going to help with the new agenda of the council going forward. So it's really great to see. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yes, you're absolutely correct. And I hope the committee agrees that an awful lot of work has already been done by us on all of these various teams which Jill has presented this morning. Well, we're not complacent. That's obvious from the recommendations here. We're definitely not complacent. A lot more work to be done. And as I mentioned earlier on, our comms team are going to be doing pieces on apprenticeships, and tomorrow I'm meeting the graduates as well. I already also had a meeting with our qualities officer, Terrence Singh, as well, to see what we can do on that front, and something I will be following up on as well. So in that case, if has anyone else got anything to say, or content? Okay. No further questions. We just move up to the vote. You've got the recommendations in front of you. You're very kindly saved my voice at our own expense. We read them out to you earlier on page 17. So I'm not going to read them again. Are we all happy to support the recommendation? Show of hands. That's unanimous. So I'm really grateful to you. Thank you ever so much. Item 6. But just introduce the report, begin with, and formally move the recommendation on page 24 of the agenda. Do you have a seconder?
I'll be second, Chair.
Thank you very much. In which case, yeah, Jill, your voice will be tested again.
Thank you. I do promise in future committees we'll bring more variety of people to present, so you don't get sick of hearing me all the time. So this report is a regular report brought to this committee, which is tempered by some of the activity around the COVID pandemic. But it's to provide members with information on workforce availability, sickness absence for Q4 of 2021. It also seeks members' approval to continue to identify new actions to add to the Employee Health and Wellbeing Action Plan to support the Council's workforce as we develop our new hybrid working model to define the future of how, where and when work is delivered. The last report to committee on this subject was the 10th of March. This showed that the level of workforce availability had fluctuated between 85 and 89% throughout the pandemic, but that there had been an increase in that to between 89 and 93% during May. I'm pleased to report that that level of improvement has been sustained, excuse me, although we have seen a slight dip. We always see a slight dip on a Friday because more people take leave on a Friday. And of course, we've been encouraging people to take their annual leave, which they didn't necessarily take during the pandemic, the height of the pandemic. So it's important that it's seen in that context. And the figure includes any other approved absence, including sickness absence, COVID-related absence if people are having to self-isolate, for example. The corporate leadership team continued to receive this information on workforce availability daily to give them real-time information so that if there was a spike in any part of the organisation, we would be able to effectively resource plan and address that to ensure services are maintained. A lot of work has been undertaken through the work of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Group, which is chaired by Marge, and that is membership of that group is drawn from all departments across the council to engage with what is effective strategies to ensure people are properly supported during the pandemic and beyond. There is a report later on the agenda about the Workforce Wellbeing Check-in Survey, but that is just an example of one of the things that we're doing to continually check in and engage with the workforce to see how they are feeling, because initially at the start of the pandemic, it was, if you can, work from home, and we were quite instructive, but over time we've tried to develop more of an engagement, a conversation with the workforce to ensure that they are fully engaged and involved in how future work is developed. The top of page 22 in paragraph 4 gives some detailed information around sickness absence performance, and we give two figures here. We give the one that includes COVID related absence and also the figure with COVID related absence removed. And what we have seen over the course of the last 15 months is an improvement overall in absence. So now if you remove COVID related absence, Q4 figure is at 7.07, which is quite close to our target of 7 days. Now, we're not resting on our laurels here because this is a difficult journey, and it's important that we look at the trends and also understand why it is that improvement has happened. And some of that may be around the flexibility that people have had in how they can work. But we still have stress and depression as our highest reason for absence in all departments other than place. But I can tell you, because I'm a member of the PPMA, every single county council that is a member of that organisation has stress and depression as the highest reason for absence. So we're not an outlier there. We're not complacent. We're still, in paragraph 7, you will see the list of measures that we've put in place to try and support and enable our workforce to continue to deliver services. But I think it's important to recognise that there's not something particularly going on in this council that makes us an outlier. I'm not going to go through the list of the provisions in paragraph 7, but obviously happy to take any questions regarding it. It's really important that we have a comprehensive package of support for our workforce. And one of the things that we've tried to do is recognise that different people have different needs. You know, there's not a one size fits all here. So there is a piece of work that we need to develop, which is understanding, and we've spoken about this previously, understanding what it is that we do that makes the biggest difference. So is it having 24-hour access to counselling? Is it that we put on specialist bereavement training? Is it that people access our mental health first aiders? Is it, you know, it could be one of many, many things. So we need to reinitiate that piece of work with public health colleagues to understand exactly why the improvement's happening, but also if there's a gap in our provision, what that gap is and what we can do to close it. I'll pause there now, and I'll not read out the recommendations this time, and take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very disappointed with that. Seriously, I'll come to me just briefly. Just before I throw it open, good morning, Councillor Lawton. Hello, Bruce, good to see you. Item 7, Jill just mentioned that. Now, this isn't just a tick box list. Saying we do all this stuff, there you go. You can dip in and dip out as you wish. As you see, there's additional paragraph under the last bullet point. So it's work in progress. We want to be sure what it is our staff are doing. Can we offer any support? Can we offer any help? Can we do it differently? Can we do better? So it's work in progress again, which I hope gives you comfort on that. Right, I guess I'll go to Jono.
Chairman, thank you very much. And I was really appreciative that mental health was mentioned in the report. Like most people serving in the military, I've suffered with PTSD, and it's great to see that we are understanding that. Is there anything extra that we are doing on mental health support that isn't in the report that we may want to be told about, or you may want to shout about?
We'll be bringing future reports because we're engaged in 2 pilot programmes which are funded through the Midland Engine, and one of those is very specifically about what barriers there might be for people returning to work after a period of absence with a mental health condition. So there'll be further information around that. Increasingly, we just view mental absence relating to poor mental health the same as any other absence. Yes, the sort of how you might want to target support might be different, but we don't make a distinction because I think there was a time where people suffered in silence and felt they had to keep carrying on. One of our challenges actually now is we have people who are still having ongoing mental health issues in the workplace, and how we can support their colleagues to be supportive, because for some people that can be quite worrying in itself, having somebody who's going through an episode whilst they're in work, and we need to understand how we support them as well.
Is that all right, Jono? You happy with that? Thank you very much. Jim.
Yeah, thanks for that. And before asking the question, I think their workforce and the sickness record have done extremely well during this actual time, taking COVID out of it as well. So yeah, thanks for all the work they've done, because they've been, our workforce is supporting everybody else in the county, so they've done an excellent job in that. And just to ask as well about the COVID, about the statistics, taking it out. One of my friends happens to be a guard. See, for today or tomorrow, he comes out of a 4-day self-isolation, but it's his 3rd time. So is there any statistics about, because certain groups of people will actually meet people, like God, he meets people every day. So it's his 3rd time now, self-isolation. So do we have any figures on that, on groups that may be affected actually more than others? And just a general question as well, on item 7, they offer the access free talking therapy at Open Day place on the 26th of May. Just wondered if there's any report back on that. Was it taken up? Is it worth doing again? Do we need to think about something else? I mean, what actually happened with it?
I haven't got figures of how many people attended or took it up, but certainly we can look into that. It's just one of a range of initiatives, and I think if we commit to the Thrive at Work scheme, that will be an area where it will encapsulate a lot of those issues around mental health support. In terms of groups self-isolating, we don't collect group data as such. It's very much about individuals who are unable to come to work. Clearly, we've had situations where there's been an issue in a school and children have been sent home from school, so parents have then had to self-isolate. But in terms of one group or another being impacted, I don't think it's kind of followed the geographical pattern of where there's been a spike in cases rather than a particular group.
Thank you. Sheila.
Can I congratulate all the workforce as well as Jim? But can you tell me, is there ongoing support for team leaders and managers to ongoing support so they can help the staff?
That's a very good question. Yes, there is, because one of the things that the surveys told us is that people have felt supported. So that is open to managers to respond to as well. Clearly, there's training courses and e-learning packages for them to access. So the one called Managing with Confidence, and there's stuff around managing remote teams as well. But I think just having the peer support of colleagues, because we also know one of the things people have missed incredibly is that day-to-day seeing people and just having a chat. And what we found is some teams have been incredibly creative about how they maintain that level of informal support. So they do virtual walks, they do, the things that you do, like having a charity coffee morning within a team. They've managed to maintain those virtually, and probably those teams are the ones who are faring absolutely best. But yeah, the survey results have demonstrated that people feel well supported, both the one that was done in May 2020 and the most recent one.
Thank you, Sheila. Maureen.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, as long as I've been on this committee, we've always been talking about people being off and the sickness stats. Stuart Wallace was a cruncher on those. And also the fact that, we can't reduce the times that they're off. So I just want to say well done to the actual, but I hear what you're saying, Jill. We can't be complacent. And I think we need to give you and the team enough time to actually analyse what it was and how it's worked while we've been going through COVID to actually reduce the sickness time, because that is a big reduction. Margie's nodding with me, and so I think she feels it's probably a big reduction, do you, Marge, after what we've been looking at over the years?
I think I'm really interested to understand why.
Yes, well, I am too. So I think we need to give you time to do that. What I'd also like under item 7 is, I think probably one of the big things that we need to concentrate on is the national initiative Time to Talk. I think one of the big things with people who have mental health problems, who have any problems, is to be able to communicate and have a chat with somebody who will listen, help, advise, whatever, but be there for them. And a lot of people will not talk about things. And I think that's one of the big things that helps everybody to overcome lots of things. And it's not just about mental health, it's about illness, it's about all sorts of things. So, Chairman, I just think it's a good report, and I think we just need to give Jill and the team time to move everything forward.
Well, absolutely, Maureen, you're just spot on there. It's been a very difficult time, as you said, and our staff have done incredibly well, but we need to give the headroom to Jill and to Marge to the next step before we start trying to run, before we can even walk on this. Okay, it's all right. We're happy with that. Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just want to really come back on the point that you've just made, Jill, about the virtual coffee mornings that some departments have been doing, and they're faring a lot better than others. Could you potentially put something together where someone from that team that's organised it shows other teams how to do that as well? Because I think that would be really good. Because some people, I mean, personally, I work a lot better when I'm in the building. My motivation to work when I'm at home is very low. But I know some people are complete opposites. But you're right, that personal interaction is quite important. And we've done a lot of virtual things as a group and things like that. So that might be a good way of passing that around the authority. But the other thing now, it is a really interesting point what everyone's made about the sickness levels. And I do wonder if part of that is because whereas people would have rung in sick before because they're working from home, they feel that they can still do the work from home even though they're not very well. So I do, as we're talking about people coming back into work, I do think that potentially in some areas productivity could be better if we left people to work from home, if they can, because Yeah, there's more, it says the hybrid system. But on the other hand, like I said, the different people work in different ways, so you can't look at it by an entire department. It'd have to be a decision between line manager and individual as to how they work better. But yeah, like you say, it is interesting around that sickness levels if it is because they're at home, so they feel that they can still work anyway.
I think there's a couple of things in that. We need to make sure that people working from home are reporting their sickness absence and it's been properly recorded, because that again is a risk. I would suggest that people haven't necessarily, but it is certainly true that people who would have not come into an office if that's where they worked because they had a bad cold or an upset stomach and didn't want to pass it around their colleagues, have probably maybe started a bit later and then done work when they felt a bit better, whereas previously it would have been recorded as a whole day's absence.
Picking up on what you said, and again, we'll have it down as an action point. Marge used the word whizzy, whatever that means. But yeah, no, we will pick up on what you've just asked for. I think best practices, that's really what you're saying, isn't it? And we need to share best practices. Yes, of course we can.
So we're gathering some of that and getting people to give their little examples of how they've done things, you know, like virtual cups of tea, have a biscuit together, walks. One of my teams has done a thing with their pets, funny pictures of the pets, and they do it at 11 o'clock every day and things like this. So people just have got to think, you know, the sort of conversations you would have, so it makes it more human, because that's what we're all missing, the human contact, isn't it? So we're trying to create those so other people can see them and say, well, that's a really good idea. I wish we'd thought of that. Let's do it. You know, going for runs together, all sorts of things, but doing it as apart and just sharing your data on your run, you know, things like that. Loads you can do.
Thank you, Helen. As you can probably gather, that's something which Marge and Joe are working on. And beyond that, because we've got Jen from the communications team sitting in the back there, we're also looking at getting some good news stories out in the media as well of great things our staff have done. And I know Jen and the communications team already worked on that, and we've had 2 or 3 discussions about this already. Probably something in the next month or so, but we will get that information out there. We want to share what a great job our staff have done in very difficult and trying circumstances. Okay, thank you. Richard.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things on the table that's in Appendix B, page 33. So the stress and depression, as you've said, is the highest in almost every department. Is it? What do you know about whether this is work related or otherwise? Because obviously we should be supporting staff, whether it's work related or not. But obviously we want to see what the patterns are, and if there's particular. I mean, there are some roles which are just stressful, unfortunately, and it's a fact. But you know, we want to see if there are things that we can do in the way, changing the way that people work to reduce stress levels. And it's a similar note really with musculoskeletal in police department, and it's understandable people in a physical role, if they've got injuries or muscular problems, can't carry out that role. But again, how much of it is because, you know, for example, someone's been hauling pavement slabs around and picked up an injury, or are these injuries they picked up elsewhere that prevent them from doing the job?
So taking the musculoskeletal one first, yes, they're in place, but so that doesn't record via an ARC where previously we had an even higher figure because of the nature of the manual labour involved by a number of those colleagues. The figure's high for place there because of catering and cleaning, and it's not just work-related injury, that is an older profile workforce who have increasingly arthritis, rheumatism and things like that, that doing a physical job sometimes need time away to recover. And we sort of keep a close eye on things like accidents and industrial injury, and that's not prevalent necessarily in that area. In terms of stress and the other departments, increasingly it's impossible to distinguish between work-related and other stress because they're interdependent, you know. So I might be going through a divorce, but I come to work and Marge gives me a really pressing deadline and I thought, oh, that's the last straw, and I go off. I might categorise that as work-related stress, but I'm probably equally stressed by what's going on in a personal life. So although it's important, and the other thing that we are currently exploring is where people are involved in employment procedures. So you've been disciplined or you've been taken through, again, those colleagues become stressed, and there is a correlation between management attention and work-related stress that I think we need to understand, because inevitably it's stressful if you might lose your source of employment, but that's not to say that we shouldn't and can't do that. So there's a lot of thought behind the reasons people are stressed and how we might address that, but increasingly we don't distinguish unless there's a very clear, yes, social workers, but frontline child protection social workers, we recognise get stressed, but there's also something in the age profile of people who are stressed as well, which again needs more in-depth analysis.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, Jonathan.
Thank you, Chairman. It was just quickly just say around on this answer. To me, it's about communication between the managers and the employees, because when we have the one-to-one meetings, when we have return to work interviews, we actually find out what issues are and what we can actually do to help support people. A lot of time might be going off sick because they think there isn't that support in place, or we can be flexible. So I know that a lot of work was done by Jill and the team after feedback was given by the committee last time around return to work, so about reporting on the VMS portal. I do think that has had an effect as well, only because I've been involved in companies where I came in and there was no return to work interviews, we put them in and absence halved, because actually when you actually speak to people, one, people who were trying it on thought, I can't get away with this anymore, but also two, find out issues and be able to deal with them. And I think that's where we've seen that come down. And around the mental health side that Jono mentioned on earlier, I mean, with the mental health first aid, I think that's really good. Also, the buddy scheme that was introduced around 4 years ago that I know has gone down really well with people as well. And it's just knowing, it's recognising the fact that it's not just a single item. You may have mental health issues, but it's looking at how we can actually a full-rounded approach to not only flexible working, but also looking at if it may be a less stressful job or other items, or how we communicate with these people differently. And I think that's the key, is to manage the communication on that. So we can't be complacent, need to keep going with that and to keep empowering our managers throughout the organisation to have those conversations. I mean, that sometimes it's difficult. I've had many difficult conversations over the years as a manager, but actually it needs to be done, and actually, really the employees are actually more thankful for it in the long run when you have those and put something in place to help them. Thank you.
Right, as Jill didn't do my job, I better do it myself, hadn't I? By reading out the recommendations before we move to the vote. Okay. Sorry, Jill, I was joking. Agreed to the continuing work to deliver the identified actions outlined in this report and include them in the Employee Health and Wellbeing Action Plan, along with any further additions arising from the employee survey and relevant work stream of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Group. Secondly, agreed to receive a further report in September this year, which provides information on Q1 2021-2022 absence figures and workforce availability, building on slightly what Maureen was saying earlier. And item 3, agreed to receive information regarding newly added items to the action plan, including the Midlands Engine sponsored and pilot pro-work research project at September's committee, which is in the report anyway. Are we all happy with that? Show of hands? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you ever so much indeed. It's great. Thank you. Item 7, workforce check-in survey. Sorry, Jill, it's you again.
Only 2 more from me. The workforce check-in survey was a survey undertaken in April of this year. It was open to all employees to complete in return. It was done virtually, but when we were made aware that some colleagues had difficulty accessing the virtual platform, hard copy forms were made available. And certainly we had requests from some visually impaired colleagues who asked for physical forms. So wherever possible, we made the survey as accessible as it could be. And just as an aside, not in the report, but it's interesting to know, the person who's been pivotal to getting the survey out and one of our graduate trainees, Alex Dodd, who's done a huge amount of work in considering the responses that we've received. So the report goes through the journey through the pandemic, people where possible being asked to work from home, how they felt prepared and equipped to do that. It mentions that we undertook a survey in April, May 2020, and that was very positive at the time. And I think we reported back to this committee that one of the really gratifying things to see was that people felt a renewed sense of pride in working in public service. But we couldn't stop there because obviously the pandemic continued far longer than any of us necessarily expected. And therefore there have been engagement activities where members of CLT have held question and answer sessions with groups of staff of up to 50 at a time. And then it was agreed through the wellbeing strand of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Group that a further survey would be undertaken. And the outcome of the survey are attached in the appendix, which some brief highlights. It's still broadly positive. Overall, 75% were satisfied with their health, safety and well-being whilst at work during the pandemic. We're doing some exploration of the qualitative information, so there was some free text boxes and people wrote comments. Now, although they're anonymous, we know where those people are based by department and groups of service. So we're doing some investigation as to why people might have said some of the things that they said in those boxes. What we've got now is some very valuable information that will help shape the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Strategy and Action Plan, and also to refresh the Employee Health and Wellbeing Action Plan. Because although people felt very supported, there were some very specific things around the equipment people have been provided with, around contact, and that's where this issue about informal contact and that loss of sense of team came from, that, you know, people had worked hard to try and develop, and certainly it's something that there's some of those tips already included in the Working From Home hub that we launched in May as well. So we're using this to inform the future of work. We've used it to check in how people are now, so that as we develop the hybrid working model, we know if people are going to be working from home more regularly, and at least 50% of people are expecting that to be something that features in their work moving forward, then we've got to ensure that they're enabled to do so effectively, because some people have managed, some people took lots of equipment home, some people took bare minimum kit home. Very much that depends on their physical space at home and who they've got at home, as well as to how effectively they can do that. 77% of employees felt satisfied, as I say, with health well-being at work, and particularly feel able to talk regularly with their manager, which I think is something Councillor Place you asked about earlier, about the support for managers. And they were able to talk about their workload and any stress-related issues. And in fact, that level of satisfaction had increased 2% from the previous survey. So that's really interesting, because actually we probably expected a dip in that because of the length of time that this has been going on. One of the things that's really important that we take heed of is 73% of people surveyed felt able to maintain a healthy work-life balance, but certainly some of the comments that we've received are from people that find it difficult to switch off. So if you've got your work kit at home, then you feel you're at work more of the time at home. So it's really important that managers keep that on their radar when they're having regular support and supervision sessions. 56% of employees reported that they feel the council prioritises their well-being, with 61% feeling that the council provides appropriate resources that enable them to care for their personal well-being. Now, those are quite disappointing figures in some respects, given the range of support we do have available. One of the things we've looked at and we've already addressed is do people know about it? Can they access it? Do they think it's for them? And so we're doing some promotional work around that to ensure that people are fully aware of all the support that is available. There's some interesting information around the potential return and reoccupation of buildings, and that's fairly evenly split between people who report being very positive and optimistic against those who are feeling anxious and worried about that. And again, it's a job for managers to talk with individuals to understand what the relevant anxieties are. This seems to put a significant responsibility on managers, but it is their job to ensure that their teams can work effectively. But what we need to ensure is that the managers have the right tools to have those supportive conversations with people. The survey did give employees the opportunity to identify what would support them to feel confident about future working arrangements. They really want to be engaged, they really want to be kept informed, they want to know what's going on. And it's important that individual needs are met. They want to have a degree of autonomy to work flexibly where it's appropriate to do so. They want to be equipped to do their role effectively, and they want to know about the clear expectations around their working. Because people don't like ambiguity, managers don't like ambiguity, so we've got to be careful because we're giving a lot of responsibility to managers to have those conversations, and they will be different with every member of their team because their needs will be different. So that is a lot of work. And the other thing that underpins all of this is whether people are working in the community, whether they're working at home, whether we're working in a council office. They've got to be able to do that in a safe environment, so that's safe in that they've got the right equipment, but also safe in the fact that if there is ongoing issues around the pandemic, that it's COVID secure. And we just follow national government guidance on that every step of the way. That's what we've done from the start, and it has served us well. But it's important that we keep talking to the workforce, communicating, because what we have found is where there's a gap in that communication, people start to fill in the gaps themselves, and that can be unhelpful because that can lead to great anxiety. So we do propose that we'll have ongoing engagement. There'll be more of the Q&A sessions. We'll do further surveys. We might do some more targeted surveys around particular groups of employees that might have particular issues. We work very closely with the self-managed support groups and also the trade unions, so that if they've got members of their groups or trade union coming to them with identified issues, they've got a channel of communication as well. So this is a short recommendation, so I'll read it.
It is. Thank you, Jill. Take a rest with your voice for a few minutes.
All right, thank you.
I've already been told off by the Democratic Services Officer for not doing what I should have done right at the beginning, was to introduce sport and the recommendations on page 45 and so on move them. Do I have a seconder? Am I forgiven, Sarah? Thank you. No, absolutely, Jim. Why? She doesn't normally, so why should she today? Right, open up, Jim. Sorry to start you off.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with this report in one respect, and particularly the lessons you've taken out of it to move forward. What you've actually suggested is actually excellent. It's partly answered one of the questions I'm going to ask. But I was a little bit confused on when you were actually presenting it in respect about the informal meetings. Is this purely from the actual responses, or is it a mix of some of the actual informal meetings? So that's just to clarify, because that in my head. But I'm just wondering, because of the 40%, I mean, can't really be happy with that in one respect. I mean, the response. So to address it, you've already said you've actually got other surveys in particular groups, etc. So I'm just wondering, perhaps in the future, if we're monitoring the responses, I know you can't monitor individual responses because it's not that, we can't do that. but you can actually monitor the returns. And would it need extending? I mean, you've done it over 2 months, and a bad 2 months as it turned out. No, but if the response is slow coming back, is it worth taking it a bit longer, putting some more information out that please put this survey back, to all the staff, because you don't know who's not returning it. So that's just that. I think the 40% needs to be boosted, but what you've taken from it to go forward, I think is excellent.
Thank you.
In terms of the responses, place was probably the area of lowest, and that plays to knowing that frontline catering and cleaning staff weren't necessarily, they didn't think it was for them, they didn't think it was about them, because it had that section about working from home in it. So we did speak to managers of the service and did try and increase the responses from that area, so there was an opportunity to extend it. I think we need to think carefully about how we engage with frontline workers, particularly those who don't have ready access to the technology that office-based staff do have. And that, over a number of years, has been a hard nut for us to crack, but we'll carry on working with the managers. And the outcomes have been shared with each department have been shared with the corporate directors to take into their own leadership teams to discuss the specifics around anything that stood out in their particular department. So that's ongoing work at the moment.
Thank you. Jill mentioned earlier on that we're putting a lot of onus and responsibility on the managers. We're working them quite hard, in fact. It's something which this committee, as Maureen and Jonathan have been on it before, will tell you, it's been raised continually. We are expecting managers to manage, and Jill acknowledged that's what managers are there to do. But we have to nonetheless thank them for the way they've stepped up to this. And it has been very good, but it's work in progress again, as we've alluded to already. Maureen?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I too am disappointed with the results, really, one way or the other. And again, I don't know why, but that's down to you, Jill, and you, Marge, I'm sorry, when you have your meeting to try and suss out why. Especially when this authority has got a superb director of public health who has been absolutely frontline, telling everybody, even those who don't or can't use a computer, but they can watch the telly. Our chap has been on our doctor cruise. He's been there as our director. And in fact, I was beginning to think he was going to be a star. Well, I think he is a star, really. And also, I can't leave Anthony out of this, because Anthony has been the chief executive and has done the job that he's supposed to do. But again, as Jill says, there are people who don't do IT. So, sorry, comms, you're going to have to start thinking out the box, and you're going to have to come up with something better, because not everybody has a computer. Not everybody can work one. And so we're going to have a different way, because Jonathan and I, both of us collectively, over the last 4 years, have done nothing on this committee but talk about communication. Is that not right, Jonathan? Well, yeah, but we have, because we've been, Jill and the team have been talking, we've been talking desperately about stress and how you measure stress and what you do for stress. And we've come up with some of the members have come up with some good ideas. We've put lots of things into situ, but we don't seem to be quite getting to grips with that. So that's something that I think we need, as Jill's just said, the people in catering and cleaning didn't think it meant then. Sorry, we've got to get the message out there. How you do it, it's down to these boys and girls. That's what we employ them for, and it's not all on a computer. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Maureen. I'm so pleased you've given Com some homework to do. Jill, do you want to respond to any of that? I think it's probably covered anyway. Yeah, give your voice a break. And the Marge's got to come right at the end anyway. Any other further questions then? I guess Marge will be you now for me.
I was just going to pick up on that point, Maureen. I think it is that That's why we're so keen to talk to people to really understand what it is, because we're sitting here, we're coming up with all these great ideas. We've done loads of things. We've got loads of provision there. It's not hitting the spot for everybody, and we need to understand why, because otherwise we'll do something else and it might not be the right thing. Let's do the right thing that will actually make a real impact and a real change. That's what I'm really keen on. And what we've said we'll do as part of the hybrid working policy that we'll be taking to policy committee next time is we'll have an ongoing dialogue with staff, and we'll set up some staff focus groups so that because if we want to know what it's like to work in a building or a place of work and what works for you and how we need to do things, who would be best placed to tell us that? No disrespect to anybody in this room, maybe not us, maybe it is actually the people that are working there and doing the work. So actually getting that more ongoing engagement with people, I think some of that will also impact on the well-being measures that we're seeing here. So I think that ongoing dialogue as part of whether it's hybrid working, well-being, what's it like to work here, what would make it better and easier for you, how could you do it differently, what would you need to make this better, to enable you to make it better, I think are the sort of conversations we need to have, really get under the skin of that. And that will be I think that's our next step of thing to do, to really get under that, because you're right, we keep having a bit of the same conversation, don't we? Yeah.
Well, hopefully that's music to your ears, Maureen. But hopefully that's music to your ears, because that's exactly what sort you've been coming from. I know you have been, yeah. So we've discussed this before. So that's an action plan for us, if you like, or more specifically for Martin and Jill. Yeah. Thank you. There's no further question. I will now move to recommendation. As Jill has said, it's a nice short one for me to read out. So here we go. Consider the findings of the latest workforce check-in survey undertaken in April of this year and approve the actions set out in paragraph 17 and 18 of this report. Are we all happy to recommend that? Yeah, that's unanimous once again. So once more, thank you very much. Item 8. Before I get told off again by Sarah, I would say to introduce the report and formally move the recommendation on page 55 of the agenda back. Do I have a second?
I'll be second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. Sorry, Jill, it's you again.
Last one from me. Thank you. This report seeks to update members on the progress of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Strategy Action Plan and to agree next steps. And this is building on some of the things we've already discussed here this morning. So, Personnel Committee approved the strategy and associated action plan in November 2020, and then it aimed to ensure that the Council continued to develop its strategic approach to having the right people with the right skills employed at the right time with the right development and support in place. And this was very much within the context of during the pandemic, but also looking beyond, because we can't just stop thinking about the future. The strategy sits within the context of cross-cutting transformation, an increasing challenging financial position and the ongoing COVID situation, which requires us to work differently and more efficiently. I think members of this committee and indeed full council has recognised the contribution of the workforce during this period. And of course, their safety and that of service users is of primary importance. This strategy provides a platform to define the new normal for the council's workforce and address how it will be developed and supported to respond positively and flexibly to the new challenges emerging as we respond to further phases of the pandemic and recovery. It's a route map. It provides a route map to transition to a new people strategy, which will be developed to support the delivery of the new council plan, which is currently being developed. The strategy is underpinned by a set of core principles which can broadly be divided into organisational culture, leadership and development, and we spoke about that quite a lot this morning, people development, because clearly if we're working differently, people will have different development needs, employee health and well-being, which is key to this and something we've discussed again quite a lot this morning, and smarter working and the working environment. The strategy has been developed through the work of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Group, chaired by Marge, and it's really important that membership of that group is drawn from across the council, so it's not one set of the council developing it and then pushing it out and saying, there you go. People are properly engaged actively in the development of the strategy and action plan. And hopefully that will ensure that there is wider buy-in and it avoids duplication of effort so that there's not a recovery and resilience plan in every department. There will need to be separate identified actions, but there is the broad principles run through everything that we do. Excuse me. So one of the key actions over the month is we've done a number of things and communication engagement with employees, which again we've spoken about this morning, is we're seeking to develop a council employee communication and engagement strategy, and there is a draft version with an associated action plan which will be brought to a future personnel committee for consideration and approval. As I've mentioned before, there's been several Q&A sessions with the Chief Executive and corporate leadership team members, and the purpose of those is for them to hear firsthand what the experience of our workforce has been, and we expect to continue those over the summer and into autumn. We had a recognition event planned actually for the 17th of July, at Rufford. Unfortunately, with the extension of the current provision, we thought it safest and wisest to postpone that. So that is now been planned for the 4th of September. And that is where nominated representatives of each department will be invited to an evening where people have the opportunity to mingle, hopefully, and just be their invitation is the recognition that they and the team that they're representing have played a significant part. And currently departmental leadership teams have been invited to submit their nominees for that event. We've also decided that it's important to relook at the long service awards, because at the moment, at 25 years in this council, you get an award, you have to purchase it yourself, which doesn't suggest something, and then claim the money back, which doesn't seem very positive way to recognise people. But also the way people's careers are changing, one and done at 25 years doesn't seem appropriate. So I've got somebody in my team who reached 40 years, for example. So it's a long time since he had any recognition of his long service when he did at 25 years. That's not the reason we're doing it, but it's an example to make the point. And also, even just 10 years, if you've started straight from school and you've got 10 years service, that's worthy of recognition as well. So we're looking at how we can do that in an efficient but effective way. And again, we're talking to our workforce so that they have a say, because it's all very well me sitting and deciding that this would be a good idea, but we need to ensure that it does have a positive impact, because again, different things have different impacts on people, and you want to ensure that the expected purpose of it is met and achieved. Learning and development, we have moved all our, or the majority of our training offer online, either through e-learning packages or through virtual delivery. Huge amount of training being undertaken by people so that they can be flexible in how they undertake their roles. Now, clearly, we also want to return to a point where, like if we're hybrid working, there'll also be a hybrid learning and development offer, because some people like face-to-face learning, and some people have found the e-learning gives them the opportunity to develop in different ways at different times, more convenient to them than when a face-to-face course might operate. We've also added things into our training offer, and you'll see there that the bereavement support training has been added, as well as one of the findings from the first survey was that people were worried not for their personal financial situation, but for that of their friends and family. So we've added some additional opportunities around financial advice, and there's a whole wealth of material around support for people to maintain their health and well-being. But as I said, we need to understand a bit more about what works there for people. I'm not going to go through the health and well-being because I think we've spoken about that in a number of different places. But obviously, if members have got any questions regarding that, I'd be happy to answer them. And then smart working and the working environment, there is a specific strand in the action plan which will further embed the principles of flexible working across the council's workforce. Some members will recall we became a Timewise accredited employer in December it was, and that was in recognition of the levels of flexibility we were able to offer to our workforce. Possibly we haven't celebrated that as much as we could have because of other priorities, but it is an important thread and we do work closely with them, and in discussing what hybrid working means in other places, so that we see whether this council is developing something that's different or whether we're just on the same journey as many other employers and other people that we can learn from to ensure that we get this right. We launched the Working from Home Hub as a direct result of the work in this strand of the group. That is where shared tips and resources can be shared with employees, and that's both the formal and less formal. So it's a repository for all kinds of information and advice that people can access at any time. The previous people strategy and the underpinning information in the workforce plan provided a framework for members and senior officers to make informed decisions in respect of budget setting and future resource requirements in a world before COVID-19. The pandemic has created a new set of challenges, but also created opportunities for us to move forward more quickly and looking to identify new ways of working. It's anticipated that the way we are working now will continue indefinitely and will become the new normal, and we need to consider what changes are required to ensure that our workforce are properly prepared, supported, equipped and developed for the immediate future. The Workforce Resilience and Recovery Strategy and actions to deliver this will ensure the foundations are in place and help the Council and its workforce transition to a revised people strategy developed to enable the delivery of the new Council plan once this is approved. So again, it's a short recommendation, so I'll leave it for Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you very much. You'll give your voice once more, break it hopefully for the last time. Well, not quite, but almost. Right, I shall open it up. I think you've probably heard most of it this afternoon already anyway. Okay, you're happy with that? There you are, Jill, you'll be pleased to hear that. No more speaking to be done. Rested, absolutely, Jill. In that case, I will read the recommendations out, which is on page 55. Consider the progress of the implementation of the Workforce Resilience and Recovery Strategy and the further actions identified and agreed to receive further updates of progress. And secondly, approve the development of a revised people strategy to support implementation of new council plan once it's been approved. Are you all happy with that? For a show of hands, thank you. That's once more, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Our comms team have gone to start the homework, Maureen. You'll be pleased to hear. Oh, good. Thank you. Item 9, workforce programme. I've just introduced the report and formally moved the recommendations on page 58 of the agenda pack. Have a seconder? Thank you, John. Marjorie, fine. Over to you, please.
All right, okay. So we've plotted out our regular reporting on here, so things like our sickness, absence, performance reporting that we bring quarterly. We've plotted on here also updates, things like coming back in respect of the apprenticeship. I don't think we've got that on here, so we need to put that on. And then the other thing I was going to say was the disability confident submission. We want to bring that back to you so you can have a look at that. So we'll make those updates. With those updates, are members okay with that as a start of a 10? We obviously add to it as we go along. Yeah.
And the provisional date next meeting, which alluded to the top of the page, is 15th of September. 15th of September. That, of course, has to go through the hoops first to be approved, but that's a provisional date at the moment. One version, there you are. You said that with feeling then. So are we happy to move that? Thank you. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your patience and your contribution. Very, very valid contributions this morning. Very grateful for that. And Jill, I don't know how you managed that, but well done. You give your voice a well-earned break and a well-earned rest. Drink lots more water, or anything else for that matter. So I'd just like to conclude the business meeting. Thank you again once more. The meeting is formally closed and the broadcast can now stop.
Really fantastic news this weekend that government have awarded us finally 28.5 million quid for the A614. Those in the north of the county will know it is the spine of the county from the city all the way up through Bassett Law into the A1, and there are all sorts of challenges around capacity there, junctions, roundabouts and things that need to be improved for safety, for traffic flows to benefit our economy. That's a huge amount of money, a massive vote of confidence in our delivery and our economic growth, and I'm really pleased to welcome it this weekend.